Are based on belief in things one can't prove. So it was, too, with the 39 members of the Heaven's Gate cult who died in San Diego. Their internet website is a window into the cosmic gospel they preached. Belief in UFOs and creatures like this, aliens. And in that, they're not alone. A recent survey indicates that half of all Americans believe in the possibility of extraterrestrial life. And now a mysterious film is tapping into that audience. It claims to be the autopsy of a creature from another world. But as Bob Brown discovered, this alien is probably from the world of make-believe.
50 years ago this July, the U.S. military announced that a flying disc had been recovered from the desert near Roswell, New Mexico. An announcement that suddenly gave rumors of flying saucers a stunning credibility. But then, a release hours later said the debris was actually from a weather balloon. From those contradictory statements grew a post-war mythology that's made it difficult to separate fact from fiction.
You have to believe something happened, and we're not getting the full story on it.
Something definitely crashed, and you know.
I don't even know if the president really knows what went on, you know.
Regardless of what you may have read in the tabloids, there have never been any spacecraft recovered by our government. There's no recovered spaceship.
Excuse me, Mr. President. That's not entirely accurate.
The message in last year's most popular film, Independence Day, was a message straight out of one part of the Roswell legacy. The belief that an alien ship crashed, that alien beings were recovered, and that the government did its best to cover it all up, even at the highest levels. The government has since acknowledged that there was a cover-up, but it says only of a then top-secret experiment to use balloons to spy on the Soviet Union, not of an alien craft.
In 30-odd years, I have yet to find one case that would make me even suspect that we might have extraterrestrial visitors.
Philip Klass, a former senior editor of Aviation Week and Space Technology, says top-secret documents, now declassified, prove that no evidence of crashed UFOs was ever recovered by military authorities. But because so much had been withheld for so long, rumors and contradictions about Roswell have traveled over 50 years with the speed of light and the substance of smoke. And this story is about how some of those claims were spread. Exhibit 1 is over there in a case at the UFO Museum and Research Center in Roswell. That alien dummy was donated to the museum by this man, Steve Johnson, one of Hollywood's premier special effects artists and head of the XFX company. It was one of several aliens he made for a movie called Roswell. But suddenly, he started seeing it in some unexpected places.
The Roswell alien, the one that we made for the film Roswell, it has popped up all over the place. I've seen grainy reproductions of it on T-shirts with logos saying the government's lying. And then this Penthouse magazine thing, I have no idea.
Johnson is referring to last September's issue of Penthouse, which featured what was termed incontrovertible evidence of an alien visitor. A photo said to have been obtained from the daughter of a scientist who worked on the Roswell investigation. Penthouse said...
Someone just threw that down on my desk one morning and said, take a look at this. I opened it up, and there's our alien, and there's this big story. He obviously went to the Roswell, New Mexico Museum and took a couple of pictures and made some money.
The most famous Roswell-related story of the last couple of years got widespread attention in several countries. The claim by a British businessman named Ray Santilli that he had obtained U.S. government film of an autopsy of an alien recovered at Roswell. An estimated 12 million Americans watched when excerpts from the film were first broadcast on the Fox network in August of 1995. The film showed a big-headed, short-bodied figure with 6 fingers and 6 toes being cut apart by 2 men in what looked like biohazard suits. Interest was so high that a second show was broadcast a week later, and by November, according to Billboard, the alien autopsy had also sold 100,000 video cassettes. Clearly, many people believed it was real, and it quickly entered the popular culture. It left skeptics in a defensive position. Show why it
was done by excited kids. I really do. I think some kids with some good artistic sensibilities and some technical know-how who got the right books put this thing together. But I just wanted to show at least a few more steps. You know, here's a few more things that could be fun if you're going to do a hoax like that, and, you know, do it better next time, guys.
It's certainly no surprise that special effects artists can produce almost any illusion, But we asked Johnson to create an alien autopsy to illustrate why he thinks the other film is a hoax. We also enlisted the help of a special effects artist currently working with the Tippett Company, Trey Stokes, who'd set up pages on his own internet site to debunk the Santilli film. We brought in a highly regarded retired military cameraman, Lieutenant Colonel Dan McGovern, to show us how it really would have been photographed if the military had done it. And we consulted a well-known hoax buster named Joe Nickell of the Center for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal, known as PSYCOP. Mr. Nickell started us off with a fascinating viewpoint on why this particular alien look is one we're likely to accept as realistic. It wasn't always that way, he says. A number of alien images have come and gone in popularity since 1947.
The little green men, various beautiful Venusian creatures, Hobbs in 1958.
Then Nickell says science fiction writers began to predict that beings in the future would begin to look more like big-headed humanoids. And that's
that our bodies are going to become small and spindly and weak, not muscular. At the same time, we're so smart and so intelligent that we're going to have big hits. Seen all the movies and all the TV shows and all the book. You must describe the
this one.
This one.
One argument that this one was not just a dummy designed from a convincing image was in the impression many people got from the film's promoters that these images were authenticated as having been shot on film that could have been manufactured in 1947, when it was highly unlikely that effects artists could have produced this. Joe Nickell says that was misleading.
They gave the impression that Kodak had somehow authenticated the film. This is not at all true, and Kodak had only been shown a piece of leader film that could have been from anything.
As for another impression that Academy Award winner Stan Winston was one special effects artist who at least was baffled by the film, asked outright, Winston said he thinks it's a hoax. And in an informal poll of his colleagues, Trey Stokes couldn't find anyone who believed it was real.
Nobody even took it seriously.
He's like, what are you, nuts?
Why do they feel that way? Here's where the show and tell began. They know how easy it is to use basic human components to make something that looks alien.
What we did is we took a life cast of a very, very thin man for his head. And then we took a life cast for the body of a 13-year-old child. And we poured clay into these molds and then put them together. We put the man's head on the child's body and then altered the head, made the eyes bigger, the head bigger, removed the nose.
Getting a dummy cast is only the first step. Effects artists who believe this is a dummy say its creators failed in step 2. Here's why. Their trained eyes picked up immediately the fact that the two people in biohazard suits weren't really moving or turning the alien, as you'd expect in a real autopsy.
So here's a good indication right here. He's pretending to examine the thing, but he's doing it by not doing anything whatsoever. There he's like, to me, I see him acting as though he's looking in the mouth. As a special effects artist, one of the things that we have to do very specifically is you build something and you know there are things it's going to do well and things it's not going to do well.
Great, that's really good. Let his head drop down now. Okay, great. That's beautiful. I wanted to do a few things that would be particularly hard. I wanted to be able to pull the eyes down. I wanted to be able to pull the teeth, the lips up and see the inside of the mouth. Good. Excellent stuff. If it didn't react properly, if you couldn't pull it around, move it around, move the head around, then, you know, it's a piece of rubber laying there.
By comparison, the other alien looks like a mannequin lying on its back. We may be left to presume it's alien rigor mortis, but the effects artists say it looks more to them like something they've seen hundreds of times. A dummy from a body cast, like these, made the most convenient way, with the subject standing upright.
This thing, to me, if you took it accurate than it does laying down.
What would you look for if it was molded from a body cast? You'd look for the indication of a seam line along the side of the body that was created when the two halves of the mold were pulled apart. Special effects sculptor Martin Meunier says that line is there too.
This one here, this black line, on other frames, you will see this black line continue here again.
There's a hint of it right there.
There's a hint of it right there, and it goes along the leg.
The internal organs were conveniently out of focus. They could be planted in a figure from the back. You never see the back of this alien. Or, as Steve Johnson did it, packed in beforehand. As real as they will eventually look, they are entirely synthetic.
We made everything from scratch. The interior organs were actually hand-manipulated plastic bags that were heat-sealed and then filled with liquid and then dressed on the outside with fatty tissue and that kind of thing. So they kind of had weight and would flop and react as organs probably would.
But even when you're told that what you're seeing isn't real, that it's a dummy filled with plastic bags on a table on a soundstage, if you're the least bit squeamish, your critical faculties can be blinded by an emotional reaction. Sometimes we love illusions if there's no pretense behind them. Sometimes, when we're asked to believe them, it helps to see them laid out clearly. By the way, the severest critic of all in this process was our retired military cameraman, Dan McGovern. Something like this would have been shot in color and with a still photographer, he says. And even a trainee would know how to place his camera, as Colonel McGovern did, where it's never obstructed.
Could that film have been shot by a military photographer?
No.
No way.
Never. No way.
But consider this. People who choose to make even the most unrealistic claims always find refuge in one question, asked in a particular way.
How can you ever prove or disprove what you're being shown here?
Well, that's the difficulty. We can't prove this is not an alien autopsy. That is, you can't prove a negative. You cannot prove something does not exist. You cannot prove there is no Santa Claus. There might be. The burden of proof is on the claimant, and the claimant is the person who says this is an autopsy film. The rest of us are just saying, show me the evidence.
The man who says he discovered the black and white alien autopsy film, Ray Santilli, chose not to be interviewed for this story. If we learned anything, it's how, once started, these stories can take on a life of their own, sometimes a very profitable life. Remember Steve Johnson's original Roswell alien? We've now seen one listed for sale in a Sharper Image catalog. In Roswell itself, by the way, estimates are that 150,000 people may visit in this 50th anniversary summer. They will join those who have searched for evidence for half a century and learned it's still hard to find the truth.
So what do you think of that alien autopsy?
Oh, that's real.
I think so, too.
Wow. This belief sure has a life of its own, doesn't it, Bob? Why?
It's been so persistent because it started with an actual announcement from the government that they recovered a flying saucer. And then when they took it back and said it was something else, the ambiguities spread like wildfire over the next 50 years. There is a petition this year called the Roswell Declaration, signed by 20,000 people, scientists, astronauts, and passed around by a man named Kent Jeffrey, to call on the government to finally declassify all UFO information and try to, hard to keep it down.
Thank you, Bob. We'll be right back.